Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Historian Radio, and this is Echoes of the News. And I am Muhammad Hussain Qazi. And on this bulletin, we will be providing you with daily headlines from the past. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this was the past. On this day, September 18th, in 1810, the people of Chile were able to form their first individual, independent, provisional government, free from the control of the Mexican crown. This was a result of Chilean struggle which was against the Mexican colonial rule in the area. This day is commemorated to this day by the Chileans as one of their many national days. Moving forward, on this very day in 1851, the New York Times printed its first ever edition of a newspaper from its own company. Now, the readers in our audience will most definitely know that the New York Times is one of history's most influential and significant newspapers. And so the publication of the first ever edition of such a newspaper is most definitely a cause for celebration. Moving forward, it was on this very day that the Irish Home Rule Bill, after much struggle, was granted royal assent. Unfortunately, though, the cause for Irish independence would still have a long way to go because of the outbreak of World War I, which sabotaged the efforts and negotiations that had gone into the royal assent being granted to the Irish Home Rule Bill. Moving forward, in 1981, on this very day, France abolished the guillotine, which is interesting to know, for this is a weapon that is native to French history and French politics. This gained notoriety when it was used to execute the monarchs of the House of Bourbon during the days of the French Revolution that would lead to the formation of the First French Republic. Moving forward, before we get into the next segment of our show, I would like to mention an incident from local history that would have taken place on this day. In 1977, Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto of Pakistan would face arrest. On this very day, there would be protests to protest such an arrest because this came about as a result of a military coup led by General Ziaul Haq against Prime Minister Bhutto. Unfortunately, the protests would result in the death of one individual. Moving forward, the next segment of our show is where we recount the births and the deaths of notable figures in the history of the 19th and 20th century and sometimes earlier as well. In 1909, President Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana was born. Now, Kwame Nkrumah is one of the most historic leaders in the history of the African continent, for it was his independence movement and revolutionary ideology that led to the independence of Ghana from what was once British Gold Coast in 1957, and it inspired many African leaders to join in and shed the chains of colonial rule. Unfortunately, though, the world must also mourn a very important death in humanitarian history today, for it was on this day, September 18th, 1961, that UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld would perish in an air crash. Unfortunately, he died under mysterious circumstances while en route to the area of the Congo to negotiate a ceasefire between UN security forces, which were there to ensure peaceful law and order, and they were fighting against the other party which would be involved in such negotiations, which would be President Shombe's forces, which had attempted to secede the Katanga region from the mainland Democratic Republic of the Congo. His plane, that would be to say UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld's plane, crashed near the Ndola airport in what was then known as Northern Rhodesia and is now known as Zimbabwe. And these are the headlines as history first heard it. I am Muhammad Hussain Qazi, and we will return to you again with another daily bulletin from the past. Good night.